Welcome to another episode of Bringing Down the Grindhouse, a podcast where we discuss horror in media. And today we're going to be discussing John Carpenter's Apocalypse Trilogy. Tonight we have a special guest, potentially new cast member with us, Murr. How's it going, Murr? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
It's going great. My name is David, but my friends call me Murr. A little bit about myself. I make industrial music. There we go.
How did you decide on Murr?
It derives from my last name.
Oh, okay, cool.
There's too many Davids in the world.
So yeah. I mean, my name's Jonathan, but I feel like I don't like having my name shortened. I usually want people to say my full fucking name.
Right.
Anytime they ask me, like teachers are like, "Oh, do you prefer John?" I'm like, "No, you gotta say my whole name."
You know, the thing is, the way I go about it, if you're my friend, you call me Murr.
Oh, okay, sick. All right.
If you're my coworker, you call me David.
Okay. Fuck yeah. All right.
Hell yeah.
My parents call me Murr.
We're excited to have you on, though.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming down to San Diego to record with us.
I mean, we met Murr over at a metal show we went to.
Yeah,
and
that was
saw
cool.
Mork and Tumult at the
Fucking
Brick by
love
Brick.
Mork.
Correct. Great show.
Yeah.
Great lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Murr, you watched one of the three of the Apocalypse Trilogy of John Carpenter's.
Correct. For this, I had The Thing. The movie was made in 1982 and directed by John Carpenter.
What are your initial thoughts on it?
I believe it is one of the best sci-fi and horror movies of all time. It did not do well in the box office.
Nope.
It came out the same week as E.T. and Blade Runner.
Oh, fuck.
And it got shined by E.T. because two alien movies. One's more family friendly.
I didn't know they got released so close together.
I can't believe Blade Runner was the same week too.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That's tough.
But
to fucking get released on that. Was it like a weekend that it got released?
It was just a random week in summer.
Oh, okay.
It was the Spielberg summer movie.
Yeah, fucking Spielberg, asshole. He did the same thing with fucking Jaws. It was like a blockbuster.
He started that trend.
Yeah, he's the one who created the blockbuster theme.
Yeah.
All right.
Overall themes, I mean, thoughts on the movie. A perfect horror movie, a perfect sci-fi movie. You can't go wrong with this one.
It keeps you interested, almost all the way to the end, where you're still trying to figure out if the people there if one of them is the creature or if they're actually human.
It does a really great job of playing with the how would I say this, the paranoia.
Yeah,
paranoia of who is what. I like one thing I do know about this movie, because I've seen the thing before, is that in the very beginning, one of the things that I like is that the Norwegian guy that's chasing down the dog says in Norwegian, "That's not a dog, it's some sort of thing." In the very beginning. So literally, if you know the translation, they spoil the movie for you immediately.
Yep. Yeah.
That's wild. I never knew that.
Yeah.
If you saw the other movie they made for it, people thought it was going to be a sequel, and turns out it's actually a prequel to this movie.
Really?
Prequel with
CGI
effects.
So the dog running in is the very last scene of the movie that got made later. So you can watch them back to back.
Yes, and the Norway camp. You
Yeah.
see how that bloody axe gets there.
Yep.
How the two bodies that are mangled up on fire.
It's all
get
explained.
there. Everything's explained.
That's so
They did
rad.
such a cool job of inserting that in
Wow.
there. Yeah. I mean, it's updated with the CGI, but it's still it's a good movie, but not nearly as good as the practical effects you get from the original thing.
And about the practical effects, they were done by Rob Bottin. And if you know the movie Fright Night,
Yeah.
he would produce Fright Night, and he had a ton of ideas for the thing. And the thing is, he started working with John Carpenter on The Fog. He just ran into John Carpenter one day. He's like, "Hey, I loved Halloween. In this movie, do you have anyone that just wears a monster mask?" And he's like, "Matter of fact, I do. He is the Captain Pirate in that movie, the undead pirate captain."
Yes.
Oh wow.
And after that, he was like, "Hey, I do special effects. I just, I produce Fright Night." And then he looked at his work. John Carpenter looked at his work and was like, "Oh, this kid has some stuff." He was 20 years old when he did Fright Night.
Oh, wow.
21 to 22 when he did The Thing. And John Carpenter told him, "Go down to the animation studio, talk to," I forget the guy's name. He is a famous animator though for movies and comics.
Okay.
And he is like, "Go to him, tell him every idea, put it in a storyboard." And then that's how we got all the effects from this movie. It all came from his head from the script, just like, I want this to pop out here. I want this to open up. I
Oh,
want
so
heads
he
to
had
come
like
out.
the script in front of him
Yeah,
at that point, and
he
was just
interpreted
pulling
it to
stuff.
himself to put it from script into pencil, so
Oh,
then they
shit.
could later put it into effects.
Oh man, I would fucking kill to see the storyboards for that.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, and the effects, researching and watching the movie, it's just, you could see a lot. I mean, I could talk about certain scenes, correct?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah.
Spoil the
Oh,
shit out
yeah.
of the movie. Spoil
Every
the shit
single
out of
movie
it.
we talk about on here gets spoiled really
Yeah.
hardcore.
Absolutely. Okay,
But it's
perfect.
old. People should have watched it. It's
Yeah.
like 40, 50 years old.
Spoiling movies is not spoiling them on a podcast where we discuss the movies. Chances are we want our audience to watch the movie first, probably,
Yeah.
and then listen to our discussion
Sounds
about
good.
it.
What first comes to mind is the scene with the stomach opening, obviously. It turns out the guy who plays that character had to stay there in that. They made a harness for him to be in there, and they had to keep putting fake sweat on him, and he was in there for 10 hours, and then they go to do the shot, and someone messed up the mechanism. They made the arms out of jello and other kind of prosthetics and all that, and they messed up the shot, and then John Carpenter was like, cut, that looked like crap. And they're just like, so you ready, man? He's like, what do you mean you're ready? He's like, we got to redo the whole shot. And he's like, I've been in here for 10 hours. And they're like,
Why was he in there for so long?
he was just trying to stay in character, stay in the harness, make sure everything would look realistic.
Oh, gotcha.
And at the same time, that same practical effect, I mean, it's his stomach, his stomach.
Yeah.
As you see, the guy gets the defibrillator. The person on the table had a heart attack, goes in to push it.
His
the
fucking arms.
stomach opens, chomps on the arms, and then flails everywhere, ripping,
Yeah,
blood squirting.
Totally rips off his arms.
Yeah, and it's just it's a great scene. But the thing is, some person came in and they're like, put a goddamn shirt on this guy. He's like butt naked on the table. Fake stomach and everything. It looked real.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that comes to part in my head is the other scene that comes to mind is when the head, in the same kind of scene, like I'd say a minute after,
Yeah.
when it's burning and it tears itself apart,
Oh, yeah.
and then it goes on the floor and it sprouts the legs.
Yeah, the legs come out from it, and then it
Love
looks like
that
some
scene,
weird
dude.
little toy
Yeah.
like running across this floor.
So the head, they made it out of a bunch of materials, and they were going to go for the shot, but then John Carpenter was like, hey, didn't we have fire in the prior shot? And they're like, yeah, we did have fire in the prior shot. And they're like, okay, well, for continuity's sake, we should put fire in there again for the shot. And was it Josh or John Bodden, the guy who did the
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, let's do that. The fire comes out. They do the scene. Head fucking explodes. The practical effect explodes. And, get a goddamn fucking fire extinguisher. That didn't work at all. And he's like, oh, he felt like a fool in that.
Did you watch like special, what is it? The editions, what is that shit called?
Yeah, like the special features
There
of
you
like
go.
the movie.
Did
Sort
you
of
watch
thing.
like special features or read an article or like you just?
I did watch one of the special feature
Okay,
kind of
cool.
films that they made about it. It
Yeah.
was about an hour long or so.
Okay.
But it did talk about a lot of things. The thing is, like, for me, with horror, practical effects are the way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
CGI can work, but all in all, for me,
Well,
CG
for all of the
like,
body horror stuff, like it's
Right.
definitely a good thing to choose.
I would like to bring up one other special effect that I love from the thing, which is
Yeah.
one of the first ones that they do, one of the first really gnarly ones, which is the dog head one, where the dog sits there and it like turns to the camera like jittering, and then its face like splits open and the skull falls out, and it's just like that.
It's a
I
flower,
love.
pretty much.
Yeah, it's just like it's a beautiful blossoming like.
That was like the
testament to-
Demogorgon before they thought of that idea.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
totally
Stranger Things
like,
ain't got shit on the thing, yo.
Well, they must have had some inspiration from something
Yeah,
like that
definitely.
because it's an 80s TV series. So
definitely.
like they were probably like, yeah, we got to get something like this in here.
And John Carpenter, that practical effect, 100% well done. It was actually a puppet.
Oh, nice.
It was actually had
Yeah.
someone under the floorboards running with the puppet,
Oh, okay.
with just like moving
Yeah,
everything.
I love that.
naturally, and it's just a creepy
I love
thing.
seeing all the behind the scenes pictures where they can like you can see the rest of the scene and not just what they're focusing on. And it's always somebody behind the scenes doing stuff, or they're like you see someone like leaning over with the mic and like trying to get it just in place but like not in the camera's view. So I love seeing shit like that. So I should watch more special features for John Carpenter stuff because I'm sure he runs into all sorts of problems.
Yeah, the thing is, for me, this movie is really heavy on effects, so I wanted to look in and see how they do those effects.
Right.
And it's from a legend. That guy.
What else did he end up doing? Do you know?
He ended up doing RoboCop.
Yeah, fuck yeah, I love
and
RoboCop.
like I said, he produced Fright Night. And
Okay.
That's one of the better werewolf
Man,
movies.
RoboCop just had limbs getting blown off all the time.
Yeah.
That was like half the movie.
Like, yeah.
Just screaming while they lose their limbs. Yeah. That's hilarious. Does anything else come to mind for that one?
I just had a basic synopsis and my thoughts about the movie.
Well, yeah,
But,
what are your thoughts about it? Because
I mean,
I got a bunch of them for this movie.
yeah, honestly. The thing is, it leaves a lot to imagination and a lot to decipher for people. And the thing is, everyone's different. A lot of this movie is the anxiety of knowing who is the thing
Right.
or where the thing is.
Yeah.
And it's a very uncomfortable movie when you look at the interactions between people. Some people don't like others. Some get along really well. I find that the character Windows, the guy with the curly hair and the glasses,
Yeah.
he's liked from a lot of people in the beginning, but then eventually they're like, where the fuck is Windows? They're just like, where is this guy?
Yeah.
And some of the shots are perfectly, like, they're great. Like the blood test scene.
Oh yes.
That's a whole can of worms.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how the hell they did it. Like, I would really want to know how they did something like that.
It might just like a quick cut, probably.
Yeah,
like a quick
it probably
cut to
was.
a scene of it just popping out, basically.
Yeah.
Something along those
Or
lines.
maybe it was already like out, and like you said, they did a quick cut to it
they
already
just
out.
cut to it. Yeah, they basically have him hold it there and be like, all right, hold it. Now stick the thing on there.
You know, they
Good.
didn't talk about that effect, but maybe I'm thinking, what if they had a fake mechanical arm?
Oh,
That's
shit,
also
That makes a
possible,
lot
yeah.
of sense, huh?
Put it in there, whole thing pops out.
Yeah.
That's
Shit, that'd be
Yeah,
cool.
that's a good. That's a
But
good.
the best part about that scene, I think, is when he's going for the blood, and he has the hot iron and the needle.
Oh,
hits
right,
it,
yeah.
Hits it. Okay, you're safe. And then the next shot, it's that guy who was in the chair now doing the blood test for someone else.
Fuck.
It's like, okay, you're safe. You can help me.
Right, they keep doing it. Didn't they establish other ways to like determine if people were like actually people? I think one of them was like if you had metal fillings or something.
Yes, in the 2011, they put in the canon that if you have metal fillings or piercings, the thing cannot replicate inanimate objects.
Yeah, or anything that's not like organic, like basically flesh, human flesh and bone and stuff like that.
They didn't really talk about that in the original, but
no, they totally expanded on it.
They did expand on it, but there are some theories as well, because there's a theories that Childs, the what was his name? I have his name written down. Keith David.
Okay.
Keith David, who was also in John Carpenter's movie They Live.
Yeah.
Another fantastical movie.
Yeah, we need to do that one soon.
100%.
You know, the cool thing that John Carpenter, the movie that I reviewed as well, Mouth of Madness, he seems to do a lot with like the evil hidden within authority, or the evil hidden within like normalcy. Sort of deal. So you have like the thing where there's like people who are just look like normal people, but they have something evil hidden behind them. And in They Live, it's like the wealthy and those who are in like the authorities also have like the evil hidden within them as well.
He did it in Prince of Darkness as well.
Yeah. Oh, and it's also in Mouth of Madness in a way as well too.
So he definitely deals with similar themes, which also makes sense considering he ended up being like, this is like a trilogy, like a spiritual
also
trilogy.
the time period too, like the 80s and whatnot. You got a lot of like that, like that's like your old school social justice stuff in a way and whatnot, and like a focus on that idea.
Well, I mean, they were sort of dealing with like the post-war era where they're like against authority, and they were sort of like that was leaking into all of the media content that was being made during that time. So it makes sense he would pick up on something like that and then bring it into all three of the films. For the thing though, what I liked a lot about it was you become suspicious of everybody in the movie.
Oh yeah.
Even if you had favorites, you kind of are wondering if it's this person, if it's that person, and then as soon as they find things out, you're finding out with them. So there's nothing you really know beforehand before the people there, besides maybe a scene or two where it cuts and you're like, oh shit, this guy disappeared, I don't know where he went, and then like it comes back and you're still in the viewpoint of the other characters, and so everyone becomes unreliable, well, like through the whole movie. And there's small little clues that they drop in to figure it out, like the breath coming out from their mouth in the cold.
In the ending scene.
Yeah, where you're like, oh fuck, it's not.
Yeah, they I don't know if were you gonna say something? Oh, okay. So a big part of it, I think it was the producer. He went to the effects guy and said, I want people to subtly notice this.
Yeah.
Just this one thing. It was a tiny shimmer in the eyes.
Oh, really?
And if you see everyone who has a shimmer in their eyes, like the little lens glare from the camera, they are human. If you do not, they are the thing. And it works for every single person.
I got to look back and...
Gotta go watch it again.
Look at it again.
Yeah, 100% look out for that. But the thing is, Keith David, the guy who plays Childs, the person with him when the whole place is burned down.
Right.
And you can't see his breath. At the same time, he doesn't have a shimmer in his eye. McCready does.
Yeah.
Or we didn't even mention that Kurt Russell was in this movie.
Oh yeah,
Kurt Russell gets enough attention. No, I'm just
right.
Right. So yeah, obviously Kurt Russell's in it, and he's like the main star for it, and ends up being like, I would say like the protagonist really for the most of the movie. But like, what sort of happens? So how do they even get into the scenario? The dog runs in. They sort of figure out that something is wrong.
They take the dog in. They just let it kind of roam around for a little.
Yeah,
they're just
taking it in. Yeah, they don't think
trust a dog.
And then
who doesn't trust a dog?
Clark, take it to the rest of the dogs.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. And that's when it starts figuring things out. Maybe eats a few dogs.
Yeah, that's one of the most hard scenes to watch.
None of the dogs survive in that one.
Yeah, especially like there's straight up dog murder in that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I didn't fully understand about the creature itself is, did it need to eat other things to get bigger? Or did it just like infect something else and then it also lived in that too?
To my knowledge, it digests one of the creatures, takes genetic material, and then morphs itself into them.
Okay.
I don't believe that it makes more of itself. I don't think that it clones itself.
Yeah, I don't think it ever.
I think it's shapeshifter.
It's one thing, right?
It swallows it whole and becomes it.
Yeah, there you go. So it throws out multiple tendrils trying to grab onto as many of the dogs as it can, because it probably knows it can only grab like one of them. But you put more eggs into your basket, you get possibility of success.
I keep relating it to the monsters in Stranger Things, but that one got bigger. Yeah, with all of it, the stuff that it collected.
The mind flare.
Yeah, like it kept collecting like rats and other animals and shit. Mm-hmm. But that's interesting. I also like the subtlety of adding in certain clues, because it almost makes it rewatchable over and over again. Where you can look for these things.
This is a rewatchable film for sure, and it gets better with every viewing.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. I hadn't seen it until recently because I rewatched it again. Except I rewatched it without making any notes or anything for it because I've seen it before. Yeah. I love Kurt Russell in anything he's in because he just chooses the weirdest roles.
You know what's crazy about Kurt Russell's character? I saw this. In the beginning of the movie, he's playing chess against a computer.
Yes.
And he loses against the computer. And he says, fucking bitch cheated.
Yeah.
Then he throws his scotch
onto
the computer. Then I realized, oh yeah, the thing cheated. The thing changed form. The thing changed around. What was his solution? Gasoline on that
bitch. Similar solution.
Yeah.
Dump stuff all over it.
Right.
That's a good character, a good moment to what is it? Not really development, but him staying in character, still being that was well written is what I mean.
I feel like he's always playing Kurt Russell in every movie he's in. He's never really he's one of those people that he's just always himself in most of the movies. He only slightly adjusts to what's going on, and he just kept getting typecasted like that. That's why Tarantino puts him in basically the same role anytime he's in one of his movies.
Yeah, and he was in Escape from New York and L.A.
I fucking love those movies.
Great movies.
They're so ridiculous, the most random shit. It's basically what Mad Max would be if he was in the city.
Oh, 100%.
And slightly less apocalyptic.
We need you to find the president in this terrible rundown town.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, that's what he's got it. I'm good.
Kurt Russell. He just walks away.
Also, Bruce Campbell appears in one of those.
What?
I think it's Escape from New York. He's like a mad scientist in it. It's really funny.
Oh,
They put like a
awesome.
fake chin on him. Yeah. And he's like trying to cut open Kurt Russell's character with his like eye patch and everything. So it's worth a watch. You should definitely go watch those. Go ahead.
Going back, so they find the creature of the dog,
Yeah.
and then they set out to go see what's up with that Norway camp.
Yeah.
And they find
Pretty much all the dead bodies is what they find, and they're trying to figure out how they got killed. The newer movie that got made answers every single kill. You get to see exactly what happened. So like watching that movie after watching the original, you kind of know what's gonna happen.
Oh, one of the crazy ones is the guy that slits his wrists.
Yeah.
Oh, seeing the blood frozen in still.
Yeah. He's like, I think his arm is like dangling to the side, and the blood is frozen, but it's still like a bright red when they go and look at it. So it's an interesting effect.
And then they go back, and then more stuff happens. I believe it takes over not Clark. It takes over George.
Yeah. This is when it starts getting into the people, and then they start questioning each other on what's a method they can figure out.
Or do they go to the alien site and find the UFO?
They put the dog away, I believe, first. I didn't watch the movie recently, but I remember they put the dog away. They go investigate the camp because they found out that's where the helicopter came from.
Right.
And then they like find basically like frozen, burned remains, and like the whole camp's just been wrecked. All just shit. There's the big bloody axe as well that's seen. And then they're just kind of like, what the hell happened here? And then I think they just like, well, something awful must have happened, clearly. Well, let's get the fuck out of here because sort of deal. And then they go back to their camp, and then the thing with the dogs happens, and that's like the crazy one I want to say happens like directly after that. There's also a really like subtle thing they do where they like there's a really like silent moment where nothing really happens. There's just the dog walking down the hallway, and it just kind of goes and hangs out in someone's room.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I always like imagine that the dog like infected that other person there.
Yes, I think that's what they were implying with that.
Yeah,
scene.
exactly. Or maybe like trying to leave you on edge. Like, no, now this is how they build the paranoia. They don't show you everything.
Well, you have to then. So at some point, they show you how exactly people are getting infected, and then you have to go back to the rest of the film you've already seen and put things together and be like, oh, okay, the dog went in at that point, so it must have happened at that point.
Yeah.
And so then you start thinking about what's happened so far, and has somebody been infected? And this is where you start getting the paranoia for the audience, and you're figuring out where it's spread to and who has it, and like who's left, basically the humans that are going to survive.
Right. And the paranoia grows with every scene.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts slow, like
ramps the fuck up like in the middle of the movie.
Yeah, it starts slow, like Windows. He just runs
Yeah.
and goes and grabs a shotgun. Everyone's like, put the gun down or I'll kill you. And they're like, okay.
That was great though. When he gets the gun, he's like, I'm not dealing with any of you fucking people. Like, what's going on? And they're like, whoa, dude, like, you need to calm down.
And then a couple scenes later, Dr. Blair.
I think so.
Oh man, it absolutely. I mean, they're checking out stuff outside. They notice that someone sabotaged their helicopter, someone sabotaged their tractors, and they hear a gunshot, and then they go, and everyone's in the hallway like, don't go in there. Dr. Blair, he's freaking out. He's waving a gun. He has an axe. He's like, I'm gonna kill anyone that comes in here, because he's freaking out. I mean, we can talk about the themes of the Apocalypse Trilogy now. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
For sure.
Yeah. So the thing is, what I thought about this movie was the themes of the following. What is the trilogy called?
The Apocalypse Trilogy.
The Apocalypse Trilogy. It has to deal with a lot of self.
Yeah.
You're looking out for yourself, and you're not really paying attention to the next person around you. Often with apocalypse films, we find that people are more selfish. I have to make sure I have my ammo, make sure I have my food, make sure I have my water. People, and then sometimes some people don't even know if they are infected. They question it, and that scene with the blood, I mean, like you could literally see on those characters' faces, am I infected? I don't know.
Yeah, they're kind of unsure themselves too,
Right.
and it's a great play up for the monster and like thinking, oh, I don't know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, I'm totally not the monster.
Exactly. Eats them like next scene.
Yeah, and then kills them.
100%. And there's a part where Dr. Blair, he's on his computer, he's reading up on the species, and it says, the infected species, if not contained, can take over the world in less than 27,000 hours.
Yeah, they had like a guesstimate
Yeah, I guess.
of what would happen if the creature just got away from that like isolated.
So
camp.
it becomes a rat race to try to keep this from going out into the real world.
I mean, if I understand the ending right, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally got there and was like
to.
killed everyone, and it's ready to like move on.
Because it can survive in the snow.
Yeah.
And whether McCready or Childs were infected or not infected or both infected, that's the thing. It could survive in the snow. So by the time that the people come back for the rescue, it's already taken a new host.
Yeah. And then it could probably survive up until it gets to like a more main city and just spread out like that. But it's definitely in line with the sort of apocalypse theme of this is what's going to happen to everybody.
Right.
And then just keep spreading and things like that. It's like it ends up becoming, I don't know, an epidemic. What's the one that's all over the world? Is it pandemic or epidemic?
Pandemic. I think pandemic is the one that's all over the world. The only reason why I know that is because there was a board game called Pandemic, in which you play as a virus taking over the entire world.
There's an app for that.
There's an app for that.
It's called Virus Inc. It's a lot of fun.
Go.
You have to kill the entire world.
Amazing.
Very cool.
That's cool. That's interesting. It also makes me think about how he really did cross over themes from all three films.
Mm-hmm.
The thing to me was it had a lot to do with body horror, so things that might happen to yourself and it'll morph you and change you, and people are usually really afraid when they see the human body get disfigured for any reason really, but especially when it comes back to life in a different form, things that you're not used to seeing, limbs in different places, teeth.
Very Lovecraft.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was touching really strongly on the idea that the creatures were going to take control of whatever host it was and change it, and then pretty much assimilate everything. For that one, it was definitely all about the assimilation because the one creature was taking over everything. And then even more than that, he loves building paranoia amongst people and showing, like you mentioned, that selfishness from people that are going to want to survive on their own. Because I saw it in Prince of Darkness too, where people were really only caring about themselves. With the exception of me, like one or two people who were like, they had sex and are in love with each other or some shit. And it's like they always insert stuff like that. I do appreciate that the thing didn't really have some crazy strong romance.
Yeah, that was the thing. He really wanted to make sure that this was an all-male cast. He didn't want to have, he didn't want a love interest. He didn't want females there because he wanted it to be, this is man when it gets scared. There it is.
I wonder if it could be considered then maybe a short critique of men and masculinity.
Could be, definitely, or just like the human condition in general.
Yeah.
If you subscribe to the idea that our society is vastly patriarchal in a way, then that makes a lot of sense.
None of them win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mostly
Everyone
because they're all
dies.
selfish.
My vision,
honestly.
no one wins.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, there's a lot of scenes where they kind of butt heads, so it's like that's a really good portrayal of a lot of men trying to work together.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I'm gonna be the one in charge. We're gonna figure it out, and then
Or wanting like the glory.
Yeah,
and
and none of it
wanting,
works.
Yeah, and nope, none of it works.
That's pretty funny and interesting. Did you have any final thoughts about it?
It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing?
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And it may have not done good at the box office, but the cult following that it has gained,
Yeah,
and the
for sure.
notoriety from the acting and effects. I mean, it's a great movie.
I agree. Like, not even just as a cult movie or horror, it's just a good movie.
Yeah,
like people
it's well done.
I did a movie night with some of my nerd friends not too long ago, and basically we like picked The Thing for that evening because like 75% of them have never seen it.
Oh wow!
And it'd been a while since I'd watched it too, and we all sat down and watched it, and everyone walked out like, that was a good fucking movie.
It was a good movie.
That was a good fucking movie. Like, that wasn't like, I didn't think I would like that movie, and it was really fucking good. And they're, yeah, so absolutely. Check it out.
Imagine seeing that and then seeing Blade Runner right after. I mean,
yeah.
Blade Runner is still so good.
What I'd give.
What I get.
I know. Same weekend, you go and watch those. Fuck.
Yeah.
In theaters, that's fucking awesome. I would also recommend you watch the newer movie that got made in, was it 2011?
Talking about 2049?
No, the new Thing
yes,
movie.
the new Thing movie.
Well, they called it The Thing.
Yep.
They didn't really change anything about the title. I think it was purposely to mislead people into thinking that it was some sort of a sequel, but it ended up not being a sequel. It was totally a prequel to the original, and it pleasantly surprised a lot of people.
Despite the CGI effects,
Right. It's still pretty good.
It explains a lot of the story and a lot of the underlinings.
I really did enjoy the practical effects from the original compared to that one, but it was already, the bar was set high with the first movie. So for that movie to be like coming out and trying to live up to that, it did a good job by not being a sequel. Because most people fucking hate sequels, unless it's like Aliens, but like, you know, shit like that. So the second movie, like technically like in the chronology of him making the movies, was the one that I watched, which was Prince of Darkness. And it came out in 1987. So how many years after? A couple years? 5 years. The essential plot of the story is that there is an old priest who dies suddenly with a little box, and it has a key inside of it. And it turns out that he has been guarding this tube filled with liquid that is basically like the Prince of Darkness. It's like not Lucifer, but like the son of Satan. And supposedly he was so powerful that they locked him away in this tube as like some liquid and then put him in this place, and there's been Catholic priests guarding him since. And that's the main premise of the story. And so when the old priest dies, another priest comes to check out what's going on and realizes that no one's there to guard this thing. But he also wants people to know what it is. So he enlists the help of a college professor or university professor, brings him in with a bunch of college students for some fucking reason. And they decide to stay in the facility where the tube is being kept overnight. And everything happens in one night. And basically what it is the tube is like conscious, like what's inside of it. Takes over a person, same idea that the thing has. Takes over people, and it takes over every single person, and then it's trying to open a gateway to let the Prince of Darkness out. They don't succeed, but one girl does like sacrifice herself basically and like jumps in with the creature, and then they smash the mirror that it was going through, and then it sort of just ends like that. He's like, we stopped it for now, but he's still there waiting for everybody. But it had similar themes.
It seems like it has that theme of losing your autonomy to a foreign entity.
Well, they connected it really hard to Catholicism and to that religion, and even the priest is like remorseful about keeping a secret. And so like I almost wonder if he was critiquing something about the Catholic Church, or like because like obviously they've had problems with like pedophilia and other things like that have been going on, or keeping secrets, lying to the public.
Lying is a huge no-no in a lot of Orthodox religions like that.
Right.
So it makes sense. I actually like that a lot, that they decided to make a priest character remorseful for lying about protecting humanity.
Yeah, exactly.
And he feels bad about like, I should probably tell the world about this, but no, I will keep it to myself.
Well, it's interesting because the way that he wants to prove it to everybody is by using science to like explain the things that are happening.
That's pretty odd.
And the science was pretty spot on. Like there wasn't really anything that I was like, nah, that sounds unbelievable. But they were getting into it, and like they get in, they like try to carbon date whatever is on the like tube itself, and they're like, this is like 7,000 years old. What are you talking about? How is this possible? And then they're like, no, it must be wrong. Like something's wrong with the machines. And they have all this like testing equipment, and they start telling you all the numbers. Some girl's like translating a book from like Latin, and it's like it's basically like the like biblical shit that you'd find in the beginning of the Bible, where it's like all the Genesis stuff, where it's like, oh, and this happened, or this is going to happen. And it's essentially talking about like, they give you like a rundown of what it is. Supposedly in their fake lore that like is right next to Christianity and Catholicism, Jesus is an alien. He's like not human, and he gets sent by God, who is sending him to Earth to warn people about the anti-God, which is the son of Satan, and that Jesus's purpose was to stop him from showing up, which he did, which is why he left, but then didn't consider that he could be brought back again. And then that's why there's been priests keeping it a secret, because they didn't know when Jesus was going to come back. And so that's what the whole fucking story is about, and it's really weird.
Question I have, do they explain how the Prince of Darkness is put into a liquid inside a tube?
Nope. They say that like they figure out a way to seal him up, and then they seal him in this tube, which I think the hardest part I had to believe in this movie was that they had this like glass tube in whatever time period that they had made it before, because I don't think glass making was that easy at a certain point. So I was like, they just had like this sci-fi modern tube when they put him in there, which is hilarious, because that's like the most hard, like that's the hardest thing for me to believe, when they like spit into each other's mouth and that's how they like assimilate people. So it's just like, whatever, like it's no big deal. I always pick something like that though. There's always a small detail where I'm like, this is bullshit.
Why is Alice Cooper stabbing someone?
Right.
Why does that happen?
So
I gotta know.
So
I gotta know.
What happens is when all the students get there and they get into the building, the entity that's inside the Prince of Darkness gets all of the vagrants around the building to keep people from leaving. And so a dude tries to leave, and he doesn't say a single line in the movie. He just like gives like a really mean stare, and then the dude tries to leave, and he comes up with like a half bicycle. Mm-hmm. It's like the back tire and then like the middle piece of it, and he just like stabs him, makes a weird face, and then the dude just falls forward and like is balancing on the wheel. It's kind of comical, but it was like, and then they're like, oh, okay, and then they all start noticing that all the vagrants are like standing around. They just stand there and stare, and they're like, oh, okay, I guess we can't really like leave anywhere.
There's so many like I can't wait to talk about Madness, because there's like this theme of like the public turning on the heroes.
Yes,
there's like this interesting bit like the public being misled into going after the heroes and whatnot, and it's a really like more of like an assimilation thing though.
Oh yeah, totally. Well, it's interesting that they brought in the vagrants and all the people who are outside and homeless and things like that as the people to kind of become the defense, or like the people that are kind of patrolling and being the authority in that sense, because these are the people that everyone sort of ignores. And it's a direct parallel to like Satan himself being like expelled and not like being part of the original, and he's considered like anti-god. Like he is like the direct opposite, when really like you look at the original story, he just got expelled because he was asking for like similar powers. That's like really the original story, where he was like, God has a lot of cool powers. Can we have those powers? And God was like, fuck no. And then
why'd you give them to man?
Yeah.
Why'd you treat man so fucking? Why'd you treat humans so fucking cool? And he was like, you know what, Lucifer? I've had enough of your whining and your bitching. Go get in your fiery hole over there.
Well, technically, he threw him to Earth, and then he went and was like, I'm gonna go live under Earth, and then created his own domain.
That is the correct.
And that's how he ended up going with that. But either way, they ended up connecting the people like that. But it was the only unbelievable part for me, or the part of the script that I didn't like, was the rushed romance between two main characters, which are like university students, which was like, it was so unnecessary for the plot.
It probably drives it nowhere, right?
I mean,
maybe a little bit.
The girl he falls in love with is the one who sacrifices herself at the end. She like dives into the portal with the so essentially what the entity does is it like goes into one person so that they can open a portal, and then they can pull someone through. So that person that they infect, she like grabs that person and throws them into the portal with her, and then they smash the mirror, and that's how they close the portal. And so she ends up being like one of the main characters at the end who kind of like martyrs herself. But there didn't need to be a connection with the dude. Like, we'll feel bad regardless. Like, I don't feel bad because his lover died. Like, I don't really care about that kind of shit. So it would have been good without that. At the very least, it does not have any like sex scenes that were unnecessary. It just skips to the morning and they're like in bed together. I'm like, oh, okay, that's simple. Yeah, you can just assume.
Yeah. So this being a John Carpenter film, we didn't talk about it for the thing, but music. How was the music in this movie?
It's like really good. I think the music was probably where he spent the most of his time, because I don't believe he wrote Prince of Darkness. I think he just directed and then did the music. So he kind of got brought in to lead everything. And the story was kind of like, the scripts, their lines were believable, but the story was kind of too out there for it to really be like, I'm going to pay attention the entire time.
Do you think it's too out there for the time, or do you think...
Probably for now. I think people, when they were watching it, they're probably like, yeah, this is pretty legit. But I do have to say that it didn't do very well. It didn't do well in the box office, and even critical reviews of it were kind of like, it's all right. Like, it's not John Carpenter's best movie. But, I mean, he had already made good movies, so they were, like, judging him really hard for that one. But the music's really good, and it fits into like the 80s like synth music that you usually hear in his movies. It also reminded me of like It Follows, like that similar kind of music, and he did a really good job with it. I wouldn't say don't go watch it.
Okay.
Like, you should definitely like check it out, but you might not. You might kind of like zone out for a second.
It's sounding like this one might be one of the lesser of the three, like the not as fun one to watch.
Yeah, the thing is amazing, keeps you interested all the way through. Whereas this one, you're kind of like, okay, I get what's going on, like what's going to happen, because they're sort of non-threatening for most of the movie. There's just a few brief moments when they're trying to like bring someone in and assimilate them. So the way they do it is by like getting fluid into their body. So there's like, it looks like a spray bottle out of their mouth is what it looks like. Like, you know, when you turn the little nozzle so that it does like...
So it does the wide spray?
No, it's like the very like specific like targeting spray. It's like a little stream of water.
Oh yeah.
That's what they dead ass open their mouth. They open their mouth and then fucking just it looks like somebody's standing next to them with a squirt bottle and just fucking did that. That's exactly what it looked like to me, and it made me laugh so much. But it's like, but they did that with the rest of the people. The only one that didn't have that happen was a dude who like sort of cuts his own throat, and then you end up having like it gets in his throat somehow. So that was like the only other one. But either way, I think what was interesting was the larger themes that it had for it, because one thing it mentions is like a supernova, which is like a new discovery during the 80s whenever they were looking at something like that.
Wow.
And then he also discusses what time means to all of us and how we sort of all experience the same things together, and we've decided that this is the thing that is. So like a second passing is a second for everybody, and we've decided on this ruling. But there's nothing else really to back that up besides all of us just agreeing to it. And so they really get at the idea that all of the rules that we think exist in the universe are just things that we've decided on and are not for sure set. And then we don't really have a grasp on what the universe is like, especially off of Earth.
That makes sense. So like, oh, hey, we have this concept of time and reality, but that's only because we all agree upon it.
Yes, exactly. What was really funny is they ended up mentioning that Schrodinger's cat theory, which we've talked about before. Essentially the cat in the box that is both alive and dead at the same time. Mm-hmm. They mentioned that in the movie, and they're like discussing it, like university students are discussing it. So they mentioned that one, and then they also mention time relativity, and then they also get into like the professor who teaches, it's like an old Japanese man, I can't remember his name, but I love 80s movies because you have all sorts of diverse casts and everyone can speak English perfectly. There's no accents or nothing, and it always cracks me up because it's like they just had a look and that was it. There was never any sort of like voice changing for what they were doing. So you see this guy and it's a Japanese guy, and as much as I don't want to stereotype, I wanted him to have a certain accent, and he speaks like perfect English, a really deep voice. And you're like, oh, okay. And he's a university professor, so he's like doing a lecture, and you get a little bit of his lecture, and that's what it's about, where he's like, these are all things you guys have decided on. I need you to like put them on hold while we go and look at things, because while they're looking at the tube and the water's coming out of it, it's like the gravity's reversed. The water's like going to the ceiling as opposed to like coming down. So like there's like a puddle of water on the ceiling. So it's interesting that that they decided to do something like that and to explore those topics, because they didn't get explored like by accident, really.
Yeah, not much talk about those kind of things in the 80s for sure.
They also kept focusing in, and I don't think I can explain it, so maybe you guys can make sense of it. They kept focusing in on the sun and the moon, and they kept getting shots of like the sun during the day and then the moon really close to it, where you can see like a crescent moon or something like that. And I wasn't sure if this had some sort of symbology for anything, or if it was just something they wanted you to pay attention to.
It could be a representation of rising and falling action or something along those lines, trying to like something
That's
to
a good
signify different parts of the movies. Like films do that a lot. Like when we talked about Black Christmas, how the opening and closing of the attic, I love it too. Opening and closing of the attic signified when the action was happening, and then we were going to have a die down of action. It was every time.
I would have to double check on that, but I think you're right. It could have been the signaling of the acts.
That's just a theory. I don't know for sure.
Well, there's only 3 of them.
Okay.
So it could very well be the 3 acts that you find in movies and film. So that's probably exactly what it is now I think about it. Yeah, that's pretty good then. Yeah. Shit. I didn't even think about it.
I didn't watch the movie. But
there's also something cool in the movie where so they explain like some sort of signal being sent out. They basically theorize that people from the future figured out that they could send a message back in time by sending some sort of like frequency that could then be picked up by people's brains while they were sleeping, because it's in a certain pattern that's happening while you're sleeping and you're more open to the frequencies that are coming in.
Oh, wow.
And so they figured out a way to transmit their message into your dream. So everyone who's in this house is experiencing the same dream, which is like they show you what it is. So like the person dreaming is like, there's a narrator and it's like, this is not a dream. What you're receiving is a broadcast from whatever, and we need you to do this. And so they basically give them like instructions on how to get rid of the Prince of Darkness. And so it's interesting because then you have to assume then that he was released again and that they were sending instructions back to help these people.
That's interesting that you say that because a lot of times with dreaming, I mean, there's REM sleep and there's deep REM sleep.
Right.
And the thing is, when you're in that deep REM, you are susceptible to certain vibrations and noises. That's why when you like listen to motivational cassettes
really,
or like other kinds of things when you're like about to fall asleep, they hit you more when you're in actual sleep. Or it could also relate to lucid dreaming.
Yeah. Well, there's like videos online that have like a certain frequency, and you can just listen to that. It doesn't sound like music or anything really. It's just like it sounds like a hum sometimes. And supposedly these frequencies can help you like feel better.
Probably like different kinds of things like stress relief.
Yeah, like stress relief, you know, if you're feeling like depressed or if you're like trying to improve your mood like overall. You can find all these things and listen to it. Although I'm always too panicked that it's like a jump scare.
Right.
So I just never I've never tested them out.
You know, on the thought of like speaking about sound waves and stuff, I was fooling around with a recorder.
Yeah.
And I was playing and I was looking at my fan, see those kind of waves and all that, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna look at this at work, and my work is very loud, all kinds of stuff.
Oh,
I'm just like,
gotcha.
Maybe like this is what my work sounds like. These are the waves that they create.
Yeah.
I feel way more stressed out when I'm here than when I'm in my room.
Oh yeah, because of all the like. What kind of job do you?
I do machine working and welding.
So for sure, very abrupt, loud noises,
industrial kind of just crazy stuff. And I'm just like, I wonder if all these vibrations, they lead to a stress because they are not because of loudness, but because of the way that they are made in wavelengths.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Makes sense why you make industrial then if you're going to work in an industrial setting.
I was about to say that. I was like, I like that you work like a really blue collar job and you also make industrial music.
That's what I wanted to do with the music. I mean, in the music itself, I had recorded and put it in there as well, and then we chop it up, make some beats out of it.
That's fucking cool.
Hell yeah.
It's a lot of fun, for sure.
I, as everyone knows, I love the fuck out of music, and I want to talk about music all the time, but
100%.
always.
I think also what was interesting for the film was the ending. So you get to the very end of the film, they manage to seal away the Prince of Darkness once more, and the main character, the guy, goes home and experiences the dream that he was experiencing inside of the place.
So the dreamwave frequency?
The dreamwave frequency hits him again, and he wakes up and he sees like the girl who got dragged into the portal, except like she's basically falling apart, like her flesh and everything is coming off, and she's like in the bed next to him. That was the final jump scare they give you, and it got me so good. And so she shows up in his bed, and he like fucking screams and gets up, and then looks again, and she's not there anymore. And then he goes over to the mirror and gets up really close, and he starts reaching out to the mirror like to touch it. But before he touches the mirror, it cuts to black, and that's the end of the movie. So you don't know if the mirror has something to do with it, because they establish that the mirrors are portals, and that if you have enough energy focused into it, that you could transfer through. And so I think what they're suggesting then is that because of what happened to him, that he may be able to go through the portal, but they don't explain it.
Somewhat like a force-sensitive kind of person.
Sort of, but it's also like this theme of mirrors has been pretty common, even like amongst people who try to scare other people. Like there's many stories that exist that the mirrors can be portals or something. Like you fucking take, what is it, acid or mushrooms or something, and you just don't go look at a mirror because it might fuck with you really badly. So it's like those kinds of themes, and like the idea that but also it was dealing with like the mirror itself, and them saying that like the Prince of Darkness wasn't like a being of his own. He was just an anti-god. Like he was everything that God wasn't. So to them, the mirror could have been showing them like the anti-self of them. So it could be like something really evil.
Yeah, that's the theme of mirrors is like a big common thing in old folklore.
Yeah.
As well as,
definitely.
I mean, obviously you have the demons of yourself when you look at yourself, say on a psychedelic. You're dealing with looking at yourself in the truest of nature. It's a lot for a lot of people. But at the same time, I was thinking, back in the day, I mean, with old folklore, they would believe that you could capture demons within mirrors.
Yes.
That you could, I mean, they do it in the Constantine.
Yes, I was about to say it. I was like, they do it exactly in Constantine.
And if you haven't seen that scene, I mean, we're on the subject of mirrors. Check it out.
Such a good fucking movie, too.
I believe he gets on the ceiling, right? And he He puts the mirror
So the
up
girl's
there.
possessed, and he puts a mirror over her, and then basically does like a incantation to bring the monster out of her, and then it runs into the mirror and gets stuck there, but it can break through the mirror to get out, so they have to like throw it out the window and shatter it to get rid of that demon.
Great sequence.
It also freaks everyone out because they're like, demons are not supposed to be able to cross over like into our plane, so what the fuck is going on? That's a really good film. You should definitely go watch Constantine.
100%.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, since it's the Apocalypse Trilogy, how do you feel that it fits in with the themes of apocalypse or something of incoming danger like that?
So for them, this evil, this like pure evil, is constant and probably can't really be like extinguished. You can't get rid of it, and it exists on like another plane that could possibly bring about like their end of days. So it fits in well with the one assimilating everybody, because that's what most evil wants to do, and that's what happened in The Thing as well. And then I think In the Mouth Madness has similar themes where like it's dealing
I'll
with
get to that.
yeah we'll get to it in a moment, but basically I think he was presenting different ways that the apocalypse could happen, as well as people dealing with themselves and often being the cause of it, because there was never really any crazy outside force. The Thing sort of suggested that it was aliens, but it was really like us that spread it. Like it wasn't intended to be going anywhere really, or it could have been that it like wasn't intended for Earth and was probably going somewhere else. It isn't like it isn't like a Prometheus kind of thing, you know.
So mankind being the host for its own destruction is a theme that is found in both of these first two movies.
Yep.
You know, man
That's
being
a good way to describe it.
an outside entity infecting man, and then man spreading that to all of the other men, and then ruining humanity for everybody.
I mean, that's like a common story that you'll find in most tragedies, where really the main theme, the main character gets taken down, usually because of a flaw that they have, but also a flaw that they share with pretty much everyone else that they know. And that's sort of what brings everyone down, and what people are trying to get through in their own existence is getting through these problems. And it's why it's usually comes to the conclusion that the reason why this stuff happens is the reason why we decide to go to war, and why we decide not to agree with each other, why we have borders and all this separation, as opposed to like, but the thing is that if they try to assimilate everybody, that's also a really bad thing, because then no one has their individuality. So it's like they show you the two extremes and none of the middle ground.
Yeah, I was going to say like that 100%, you know, humanity finding these things and bringing them in and then ultimately making them the demise. It perfectly sums up like the H-bomb. You know?
Yeah.
We have this power and we could use this.
Yeah, exactly.
Should we?
Yeah.
You know, the thing is like I think it was.
Oh, you mean like when they made the atomic bomb and he was like doing all the fucking quotes? Oppenheimer was so regretful.
Right?
Like as soon as it was done, he was like, "Fuck, we shouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
This. Like, why did we do this?"
Yep.
But I love his quote from it. I would have to find it exactly. I'm gonna go find it. It's too good.
Do it. Find it.
Yeah.
I will wait for you.
Yeah, it's a set. So when they were making it, halfway through making the atomic bombs, they more than one of the scientists had really, really regretful feelings towards making the atomic bomb, because they thought they were having a breakthrough in science. Oh yeah, so this is great. So basically, the first atomic bomb was successfully detonated on July 16th, 1945. In the Trinity test in New Mexico. Oppenheimer later remarked that it brought to mind words from the Bhagavad Gita. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Is essentially what he decided to fucking.
Damn.
He was just like,
Wow.
"This is terrible. We shouldn't have done this." And then we fucking nuked Japan twice. So
I immediately regret making this.
And well, essentially what happened during that time was all the scientists regretted everything, but then they silenced like everybody and just continued with what they were doing. And so, but it's a good example of humans being terrible people and deciding to do something like that. And apparently now we have things that are like 1,000 times stronger than that, like the fucking hydrogen bomb and things like that. We're like, oh fuck. They're just sitting in some silo somewhere.
Yep. Just waiting for their day.
That's the scariest thought, that like
Just
Donald
like
Trump
the
has
Prince of
fucking
Darkness.
nuclear codes. Like that is the scariest shit for me.
The true horror.
The true horror is
Then
what is
again-
waiting.
Japan has Godzilla, so I mean.
Yeah. It's coming. It's coming for us.
I really hope that they decide to make that shit real and just be like, you know what? I'm tired of all of you. Here's Godzilla.
Oh, what what I'd kill for some real kaiju fighting.
Yeah, just
Yo.
out in Florida, fucking.
Side note: go watch Pacific Rim.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fun times.
don't watch the sequel. But anyway, I think that's pretty much
Your final
my
thoughts?
final thoughts on it. It was it's worth the watch because of the larger themes that you get through it, and it really makes you start thinking afterwards as opposed to what you're watching then. But I think that was sort of his intention. It almost seems like other things are supposed to be connected to it, and that this was such a small piece of the larger story that he was creating. Because like the story that the girl was reading from that explains the whole part about Jesus, she was like only like 15 pages into it. And that's a big ass book that she's like trying to translate, and she never finishes translating it. So I'm like, I have to assume that there's way more shit in that, and there's probably other stories along with it. So it's cool that he didn't give you everything, and he didn't make you feel dumb. You know, when there's movies that like they take 15, 20 minutes to explain every single fucking thing, and it's like a intro tutorial to a game where you're like, just let me skip this shit.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like a lot of times, like in film and in fiction in general, you can kind of like leave some stuff unexplained, and your audience will do what they can to rationalize it. If it's good enough, they'll logicalize it. If that's a word, I don't think that's actually a word.
You really need to tell the audience things that are like super pertinent to what the story is. Like, it's funny that I mentioned Pacific Rim, but they do it in the beginning where they explain how the robots work, how the fucking what are the Jaegers?
Yeah,
how they end up working with two people. They explain that in the beginning, that there's like a link between the people, and it explains that they have to be close. They have to be like brothers, family, lovers, things like that. And so it can't just be any random, unless you're fucking Pentecost who carries nothing into the drift. But there is cool shit like that included in all of them, and it's interesting nonetheless to go and watch it. But what was the next movie that we talked about? What's the one that you watched, Mitch?
I watched In the Mouth of Madness, which was released in 1994. It was actually released in Italy 3 months prior to the American release.
Shit.
Interesting. I don't know why they did that.
Yeah.
It only made $0.8 million of its $9 million budget. It did not do very well.
They spent.
I'm telling you right now, give me a moment. I got this shit right here. All right. They spent $8 million on it, and the box office made 8.9. They like just barely made a tiny bit of profit off of it.
Okay, I thought you said 0.8.
Well, yeah, I thought you said
no. They made nothing back
They
on
only
that.
made 0.9 million profit.
Okay.
So yeah, but 8.9 was the box office. The budget was $8 million.
Good job,
Gotcha.
John.
The big I think the biggest actor in here is probably Sam Neill, and you'll know him from Jurassic Park.
Yep.
As the paleontologist who cuts the fat kid open.
I love that scene.
I do too. Yeah, exactly.
It's Jurassic Park horror.
Dr. Alan.
I think so. Sure, we should fucking do Jurassic Park.
I think Jurassic Park is horror.
I think we'll call it horror for today. Yeah, hell yeah, let's do it.
We should definitely do that.
Horizon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for
there
sure.
we go.
Fuck yeah,
hell
I love
yeah.
Event Horizon.
I approve of all these movies. But so 1994 was when it was released, but it wasn't technically released until February of '95 in the U.S. But whatever. So the movie itself is a huge Lovecraft love fest. It is basically just a large collage to the love of
even the name
Lovecraft. Yeah, even the name In the Mouth of Madness is relative to like Lovecraftian.
It's what's that story at the Mountain of Madness?
At the Mountain of Madness. Yep, that is one of
the story from H.P. Lovecraft.
Yep, that is definitely one of them. It actually has a bunch of let's get into the plot. I'll get into the plot of what the movie is actually about. So essentially, it starts off with the main character's name, who's played by Sam Neill. His name is John Trent, right? It's the most basic name you can think of. So John Trent is basically meeting with one of his, he's an insurance investigator, and he's meeting up with this man who runs a publication based out of New York called Arcane Publications. Already we're getting spooky.
Yeah. That's originally what H.P. Lovecraft released his shit on.
Yeah.
He would give it to like a newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. He would do a newspaper sort of deal. And so the author in question is Sutter Kane. So he's sort of like a
what a good name.
What a great name for someone. So Sutter Kane, and he's sort of like a Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft figure.
Right.
And all the stories center around this one setting called Hobbs Vale. It's like Hobbs Lane, I believe, is what it's called. But I'm probably wrong on that. Hobbs End, excuse me. It's called Hobbs End is the name of the setting that most of his stories are centered around. And so when he's talking to this guy, a man comes through with an axe into the room, smashes through the window, looks at him and just goes, "Have you read Sutter Kane?"
Oh,
And then and he tries to like basically put an axe through John Trent, and then two cops out of fucking nowhere just gun this guy down like in the middle of this restaurant.
Where
And
they
then,
shoot him?
Yeah, they shoot him dead.
Oh,
yeah.
fuck. Okay.
And so basically it goes to that, and then well, after that, he's like, "Oh my god!" And he starts investigating this Sutter Kane man because there's a bunch of like reported things of people who read his books who go crazy after reading them.
Nice.
So essentially, he starts investigating. He's like, "This must be a publicity stunt. I don't know what's going on." So he reads all of Sutter Kane's books.
Yeah. Yes. Fuck yes.
Amazing.
He
dives in.
He goes through them and he starts finding red lines that are in all of the covers of the books. And he starts cutting them apart and putting them together, and then they become a section of the map of New Hampshire. And he believes that it is supposed to be where Hobbs End is located, the fictional setting.
Okay.
Oh wow.
So that's where it goes. And so he goes on a quest with his other like reporter friend. She's I don't remember her name, and she doesn't have like a huge portion of it. She's just kind of a partner that's with him that sort of like counteracts his ideas and whatnot. The movie doesn't happen in chronological order either. It starts off with John Trent being in an insane asylum covered in ink and whatnot, and like kind of just muttering to himself. And then it like flashes back. So majority of the movie is in flashbacks.
Okay.
So what he does is he goes on this quest to find Hobbs End. So they're kind of like they're wandering around trying to find it. They can't really quite find it. Like, I don't think this place actually exists. Does it really exist? And then they eventually go through like while one evening they eventually find a turn that goes into Hobbs End, and they cruise on in there, and they come to this very like interestingly odd town, kind of quiet, kind of small town looking. It's got like a cute little black church in it that has like golden steeples and whatnot, which
all right.
You'll see that John Trent will comment that this is like one of the pages from one of his books. This is descriptions of his books. This town feels like it was out of one of his books. Yeah, the people of the town there are also very, very strange as well. So he goes around there, he investigates the church, and then he's looking for Sutter Kane. He's looking to like talk to the actual author because he's convinced this whole thing is a publicity stunt, and he's just like making shit up, and this is just silly,
right?
Sort of deal. So they go there, investigate the town. One of my favorite scenes is they meet it's a lady played by the actress Frances Bay. If you guys know who Frances Bay is, she was in Happy Gilmore. She's Happy Gilmore's grandma in that one.
Okay.
So that little lady, and she's just like the bell lady at the hotel that they go to stay at. And her name is the same as one of the characters in the book.
Oh, sick.
And so they like go upstairs, and he starts talking to his partner. He's like, that name is directly out of like Sutter Kane's books. Like she like hacks her husband into pieces with an axe.
Wow.
So like pretty soon, like I'm pretty sure like that woman is like crazy.
Oh my god! Please tell me she's crazy and she tries to kill him.
Oh,
with
it gets
an
so
axe.
good. Anyway, so like later on, he's like talking to her. His partner disappeared. She ends up disappearing at one point because she's like convinced like no, everything is fine. And he was just like no, we're living in reality right now. So one of the big points is like what is reality, what's not when they enter Hobbs End.
Okay.
So it's like a big like what is reality, what is not sort of deal, and it like occupies a section of New Hampshire. So they go there. A lot of the names of Sutter Kane's books are also direct references to H.P. Lovecraft books, which is I have like a whole list of their names and whatnot here, but I'm taking 10,000 years to find them because they're right here. There we go. Give me a moment. So like they have one that's like The Whisperer in the Dark, which is a play on The Whisperer in Darkness, and then The Thing in the Basement, The Thing on the Doorstep, Haunter Out of Time, the Haunter of the Dark.
Yep.
And then there's like the Hobbs End horror, the Dunwich horror. So it's a big it's a big play on the Dunwich sort of idea that Lovecraft has a lot of his stories in. So they go there. Later on, he's like talking to the lady, and she like kicks something that's behind like the bell tower, and it like grunts a bit. And he's just like gets closer, and she's like, "What can I help you with? You have everything that you need. I don't think you need anything else here."
Pay attention to the noises that's coming from this little thing right
here. Yeah,
here.
exactly. And then the camera pans down beneath her, and there's this naked old man like chained to her leg.
Oh my god.
So Frances Bay, the sweetest looking little old lady, and with like kind of like circles under her eyes, is just crazy. So eventually, the movie's very strange in that it basically is like essentially is that Hobbs End is like the accumulation of all of like Sutter Kane's ideas. So all of his books that he writes come to life in this town of Hobbs End.
Gotcha.
And he's basically working with like Lovecraftian like eldritch gods, and he's doing their bidding by writing these stories.
I like that.
Wild.
So he like hauls up inside this like pitch black church with like the golden steeples and whatnot, which is a description for one of his books. They go there and like try to encounter him. And there's like a couple guys that live in the town that show up with shotguns, like ready to take this guy down because they don't like what's going on with the church. They don't like how things are happening. And it's and then he sicks like a bunch of German shepherds on them, I think is what they are. They're Dobermans, I think. So like a group of like 5 Dobermans like get sicked on them and they all run away essentially. But like bits from the book start playing out. So like one of the farmers that was in front of the church ends up like offing himself in front of Trent. Trent encounters like a group of like crazed villagers that like hack people to pieces and whatnot in the middle of the streets.
Goddamn.
So it's a lot of what he writes in stories is just coming up in front.
They come up in this town and like manifest, and like you find out that the guy that wielded the axe that attacked him was actually the editor for Sutter Kane. Was his editor. So his editor went fucking crazy and then went after him. So it spreads outside because it's in New York when they start. So from New Hampshire to New York. So that's kind of the idea.
Goddamn.
So it kind of takes place with this like these fantasy elements of Sutter Kane's story spreads out to the rest of the world.
Gotcha.
That's the kind of idea. So I mean, one of my favorite scenes is where he meets Sutter Kane, and Sutter Kane's there with his typewriter, just typing up stories like very, very happily. And there's this big slimy door that's like bending inward towards him, and whatnot the whole time. And he's just like, oh yeah, the elder gods like demand that I do this. I do this for them.
Oh, what?
Sort of idea, things
That's
like that.
great.
And so they will envelop the world using my stories and like as as the works.
Okay, so he ended up being sort of like their conduit into the world and like releasing everything they could through his stories. That's cool. And they did it through the literature, so I like that.
Yeah, and they do it through literature. And so so Trent basically encounters like there a bunch of just freakish things happen there. Like people's faces start becoming more distorted looking. A lot of like the cops are like after everyone in that town too. The cops are all corrupt and then they look at each other. They have like big gnarly pig faces. They're all like scarred up and stuff. So there's another like
I love the running theme across all media.
Cops are bad.
Cops are either bad or they get turned into literal pigs.
Yeah, exactly.
Duke Nukem had it.
I fucking love that. Like all of them turned into like warthogs and pigs and shit, and like that was them through the whole game.
Oh my god.
Stuff.
Super interesting. I remember one of the scenes that I like a lot is that there's this like I read a lot. I've read a lot of Lovecraft, so I love the idea of like people who are kind of like the warped deep ones, like the fish people.
Yeah.
Who have like the fangs and like the gills and everything. And there's like a scene where like there's a group of children that are all just like staring at Sutter and he gets back with his partner again at this point, who's with him, and she starts going like cuckoo while she's there. She starts going kind of crazy and like manipulating like the drive, like the car that they're driving and stuff, to the point where he gets in an accident. But this little girl walks up and she has these really sharp teeth and her face is all scut up and she's just like, "It's mommy's time now."
Oh, that's the picture you showed me.
Yeah. It's fucking creepy.
So the practical effects are pretty good.
Yeah, the practical effects are pretty awesome in it. I liked it. There's a part where this guy, one of the farmers, like offs himself and he says that this is because that's how it is in the book.
Oh, fuck.
This is what the story demands, and then he just blows his head off. Yeah,
very meta.
The music in it, very like 80s metal. What? Like 80s hard rock metal. Like the first opening thing is a super like electric guitar riff that sounds almost like it could have been like a Metallica song.
Nice.
It could have been, but maybe a little bit more melodic, I would say. But Metallica's kind of melodic.
Who did
whatever.
The music for that one, do you know?
John Carpenter and
did
Jim Lang. Lang and John Carpenter. Those are two. I don't know much about Jim Lang, but I know John Carpenter. So
gotcha.
And John Carpenter likes metal. I know he does.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just convinced he likes it.
Yeah.
We were talking about that, like synthwave and whatnot is basically just metal, but electric.
Yeah. Synthwave nowadays, same fan base as metal fans.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
Yeah.
It's just made with guitars.
Man, I listen to so much fucking synthwave at work.
Oh,
so before I would like to get back to like this relates to the apocalypse as well, because this fiction is spreading throughout the world and infecting people. So essentially, once like the story concludes basically with John Trent being chased by these like eldritch beings. So like this is where they really ramp up like the practical effects by having these big slimy tentacly monsters chasing after him and whatnot. And then he like runs out of the city, gets out of Hobbs End, and like walks fucking back to New York, and like eventually he shows up outside of a similar diner and sees a guy reading a Sutter Kane novel. and he's just like, have you read Sutter Kane? And then he just like kills the guy with an axe.
Oh, it goes full circle.
Yeah, it goes full circle like that as well. And he then that's how he ends up in the insane asylum, and he's like trying to tell them, like, Sutter Kane's like, yeah, the elder ones are coming for you. It's coming, him. And nobody believes him. And then like during like the night, he hears a bunch of screaming and like lightning and stuff. He can't get out of his cell, and then he gets out, and just everyone in the city's gone.
Oh shit!
And he just walks through. It's all been like dilapidated. There's blood all over the place, but no bodies. And he just like walks. He just like walks out after he wipes all the ink off of his face and everything, and just kind of like saunters out of the insane asylum. It's a wild movie, but I enjoy it. It was a lot of fun.
So is that how it ends? He just walks.
Yeah,
away?
he just walks out, and then the movie ends like that.
Fades to black.
Yeah, basically, as the world is done.
That reminds me of like the ending of. Did you guys see the movie The Crazies?
I feel like George Romero had something to do with that, didn't he?
Yeah, he totally did. It was essentially like zombie apocalypse happening, but the government figured out how to quarantine cities. And so because these two people escape into a new city, it like zooms out and shows them getting ready to quarantine the city they just went into. So basically all the hell that they went through for that film is about to happen to them again.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so this really ties in with the apocalypse, though. So it really this one was really direct about it. I
love that it's literature, though. It's like not a normal medium, not a virus, not something that you could get from another being.
Yeah.
Not a plague.
Usually found in almost everyone's home. So it's like it's easy to get, and it's not. It's like perverting the idea that like books are almost always good knowledge. That's the idea that H.P. Lovecraft was always getting at. Was that once you got certain knowledge, it was too much and it would drive you crazy. And that was the idea behind like the cosmic horror from these eldritch beings that would speak to you.
Essentially it follows a very Lovecraft. This is just a love letter to H.P. Lovecraft in a movie form. That's really what it felt like to me, because all of the book references, like the way everything is stylized, like the feeling of like being the only one that's being excluded from the group and having like the public, the general populace against you sort of idea, as well as the discovering unknown knowledge that drives you mad, and then and then comes full circle as well. You become the monster that you're investigating or that you're trying to fight as well, and that's a very Lovecraftian theme. But I actually really enjoyed this movie, and
it does it in a tasteful way.
Yeah, it does. I think it was very fun. It was a very fun movie.
A good love letter to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't trust the local goth girl at your Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, don't know. She's up to no good. Up to no good, definitely.
She's definitely gonna sacrifice.
Yeah, you ever read Sutter Kane?
I should just say that to somebody random and see if they get it.
Oh my god.
This also reminds me of the episode we did before. It was episode 9. We did From Beyond and A Study in Emerald.
Oh yes. A
Study in Emerald was totally.
I love A Study in Emerald. It's a very cool book.
A Study in Emerald was like an alternate reality, basically, where
a pastiche.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the word. It's a pastiche.
Yeah, it was very.
We learned that. That freaking word.
It's essentially just making a story inside of a story.
A story in the style of.
Yeah, in the style of. Yeah, it's like a nice. It's paying tribute to that.
Are you familiar with that one, Mur? A Study in Emerald?
I have not seen that one.
So it's basically
it's a short story.
Yeah, it's a short story, but it's basically like a Sherlock Holmes story told like as if Sherlock Holmes is working for the Great Old Ones.
Yep.
And is written like a Lovecraftian story.
Oh wow!
It's badass. Check it out.
Really
Highly
cool.
recommend checking out.
Is it a movie at all, or just
no? It's just a short story.
Okay, cool.
Little short reading. Essentially, what happens is one of the old ones gets killed while they're visiting another old one, which is hilarious because one of the great old ones is the Queen of England. So it's a great critique of the Queen during that time. And so somebody visiting, which I can only assume was like the German version of one of the old ones, went to go visit, but he gets murdered. And so the Queen pulls in Sherlock Holmes and is like, I need you to figure out what happened here. And so he goes and investigates what happens. But it's like they're all well aware that the old ones are alive and they take over the world, basically.
Wow. What is the well, I mean, because he's working for them, so he's like on the side of the Great Old Ones.
Yeah.
And then he's basically working against humanity, who's trying to bring them down.
Yes, exactly.
And it follows the same story as a Study in Scarlet, or a it's what it's called, a Study in Scarlet, which is an actual like Sherlock Holmes story.
So they mash up those two things.
Yeah, they just make a direct copy but flip it on the opposite.
Have you ever thought about doing a short story episode?
Yeah,
we just did one. We're more than open to doing literature.
Okay. Cool.
Absolutely.
We did the Animatrix, which is an anthology of short stories.
Okay.
But literature short stories would be awesome if we did something like that.
Have you guys ever read I Have No Mouth, But I Need to Scream by Harlan Ellison?
I don't
No.
think so.
It's like 10 pages. It was made in the 70s. Basically a sci-fi dystopian.
Hell yeah.
Yes, please. Can I have that? I want it.
It's a great read.
I'm gonna.
We should
all right,
definitely
cool,
do
yeah.
something
Yeah,
like that.
we'll definitely
check that one out. If you're hearing the podcast, it's a great one. 10 pages, you can't go wrong.
I know we wanted to do something like something Wicked This Way Comes, and like other things that are similar to that.
Put them together.
Yeah,
should do both of
that
those,
should
maybe.
work
That'd be
out
fun.
pretty well for
Yeah.
something like that.
I'm in the need for a good
Is
new
it
lit one.
strictly sci-fi or is it horror as well?
It is a sci-fi. It's a little bit horrific because there's a lot of
Terrible
scenes
things
of
happen.
torture. There's a lot.
Gotcha,
There's
okay.
a lot. There's actually a game that was made on it. It takes the themes from the 10 pages.
What was the
main
game?
language. It was made for PC like back in the 90s, but they go in. There's like 5 characters in the short story, and they
Okay.
are being controlled by a computer.
All right.
And it's just the computer wants to shut off, but doesn't because he has 5 people to torture when everyone else in the world's dead. So he's just like, yeah, I could stop doing this, but then what are you guys gonna do?
Yeah, exactly. No, that makes sense. All right. Did you?
The video game definitely expanded upon that. Goes into each individual person's anxieties and fears and all that, and it's intense.
Sounds interesting. We'll definitely take a look at it. I want to do some more short stories, especially for
Same.
literature.
I feel like that'll be a good one along with the other one that you just mentioned.
We also did Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yes.
That was a fun episode.
Yeah,
honestly.
we did that one. We had Dorian singing some of the melodies in it, and then we did the film that came out afterwards. We did an episode for that one as well.
I haven't seen the film yet. Need
It's
to.
actually good.
Yeah, it's fucking good. Movie.
Actually good. It's not terrible.
Very enjoyable.
Mhm.
Especially if you go in with like low expectations.
Yeah, exactly. We went in like I was going in going like, this
Yeah,
might not be that good, and it was actually I had a
It's
blast.
really good.
It was fun.
Did you have any final thoughts on that movie?
If you love Lovecraft
Yeah, you'll enjoy
and
it.
you like watching the guy from Jurassic Park like go completely nuts,
Nice.
then that
I
is
could
a
see
movie
that
you want to
happening.
watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to watch Sam Neill go crazy and you love Lovecraftian themes and just like weird like spooky stuff, it's ominous and giant crazy tentacle monsters and creepy children with shark teeth, then watch this fucking
He's got
movie.
the face for it.
Yeah.
It's like who's the guy who plays Green Goblin in Spider-Man?
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe has that fucking face where like he just looks like he would be nuts in any character that he tries to play in.
Probably the nicest guy ever.
Yeah,
though,
he's like
but,
he's probably like super nice. But
Yeah.
I really liked whenever he did the weird smile.
Oh yeah.
And like you see all of his teeth and shit. So
Fucking, he was in like Antichrist, that fucking Lars von Trier
Yes,
film. It's a
yeah.
fucked up movie.
He's in a lot of Wes Anderson movies.
hell yeah,
Yeah.
he is. That's true. He really is.
Yeah, I loved his character in the Grand Budapest Hotel. He was the guy with the motorcycle and the
Yep.
leather,
Yeah.
just trying to kill all our main characters.
He's always punching people. That was like the thing that happened in that film, which is really funny. I have to say though, I really like the poster for In the Mouth of Madness
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
because it looks like a classic storybook, like literature book you pick up like in the 80s or maybe even
It's
before
got like
that.
the investigator outside the house with like
Yes.
the flashlight. It looks
Yeah.
like a Lovecraftian sort of like
yeah,
thing.
yeah, they
Like all
definitely
those
made a
Arkham horror
poster like
games.
that, and so I really enjoy that they did something like that.
I like the poster for your movie. It was very creepy.
Oh yeah, the Prince of Darkness one is it's pretty good. And then of course I love the poster for the Thing.
Yeah.
It's classic. Like just the outline, the image of like you just know what that is.
And that's the thing. It took the painter 24 hours to do that.
I believe that. This was
And-
also when they were like commissioning artists to make paintings for their posters.
I think I heard that they weren't initially pleased with it, but they didn't have time to do anything else. So they were just like, that's what we got. Let's go. Let's roll it.
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
It's an awesome poster.
It is.
And it's crazy because it doesn't really reflect the thing at all.
No, it doesn't
And-
reflect what it
because
is at
the
all.
thing was, John Carpenter said, if we're going to make this movie, but if we're going to make this movie comparative to like the 1950 version with what is it, the thing that came from outer space,
Mhm.
we can't have a guy in the suit. If we have a guy in the suit, they're going to fucking laugh at us. And that poster is a guy in a suit.
Yeah,
But it looks
it's
great.
literally a guy in his snow gear with light coming out from his face, and so it does kind of make you believe that it's a little more sci-fi than anything else. But then but it's so iconic at this point now to get something like that. I'm looking up at the posters on my wall because I have the Army of Darkness one, the Blade Runner, and the original Star Wars, and they're all painted. They were all like originally painted. They weren't like photographs or anything taken, and so they survive that time, but also specify a certain time period where movies were being made when they were commissioning artists and paying a lot of fucking money for these things. It's like Conan the Barbarian, I think, was another one.
Mm-hmm.
The movies,
that's a very painted looking.
They had very, very well painted posters for it, so I appreciate the work they put into it. I don't much like the new posters, unless for some reason I really like modern minimalist posters.
I can understand that.
I really like when people redesign posters and make them really minimal. Yeah.
it just says it on it. There you go. Get it.
I think it has like a single red balloon and it's just it.
How were the title cards for your guys' movies? Were they
mine was
flashy
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so they spend, I don't know, like 7-8 minutes on the intro stuff. Like you get just at the beginning, like 5 seconds in, it's like John Carpenter film, and then like 2 minutes of the film passed, and then it's like here's the director and the music, and then like another 2 minutes passes, and then it's like here's the art directors. And they did that. They like extended it out all the way through the intro. They didn't just let it continuously play over something. It would cut to black and show the name.
It kind of did the same thing. It started off like a black, and then you have that this like totally like 80s metal like song going on in the background, like super like cool guitar work and stuff like that. Very not synthy, like what I would normally expect, but like a good kind of hybrid of those two things. So you can definitely tell it's Carpenter. You'd be like, this is definitely Carpenter's music that he's doing. It's great. And then it kind of just fades into like the corporate setting of where the main character is walking around his building and meeting up with his people, and then it gets into him going to to meet up with his client.
In the diner thing.
Yeah, in the diner, exactly.
Does it come up after the diner scene or
no? After that, no. It's kind of like it's way before the diner scene, and then it ends, and then when he's like sitting in the diner, there's no more cards after that.
See.
Yeah.
Mine. For the thing, it was just, black, directed by John Carpenter, starring Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
And then they have the infamous, the burning title card, The Thing. And how they got that effect was they used a fish tank. And then they etched out the thing in glass on a piece. And then they put a, garbage bag over it. And they took a lighter and burnt, and then they put light through the garbage bag and then lit it on fire. And when it burned, it had that ominous blue light, and they added the music to it.
Wow, that's super cool. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you figured that out.
He was just cool. Like the effects person who did that. He was like, yeah, it was really cool. Like we did that in like 2 minutes. And I was like, how do you think about that? How do you
the work ethic of the past.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, really though.
Yeah, no, that was great. And then it cuts to the UFO coming down. So it gets right to it.
Very cool. I feel like we're kind of at the wrapping up point.
Yeah. Do you guys have any final thoughts about any of the movies? Any themes, things like that?
I feel like the theme of authority, being evil is present in all of them. The theme of, humanity destroying others, the theme of man-made things or man-caused things destroying mankind itself is a huge thing.
Absolutely.
I feel like the Apocalypse Trilogy as a whole is definitely worth a watch, though. Definitely worth a watch if you like horror and whatnot. At least for The Thing and Mouth of Madness, in my opinion. I did not see Prince of Darkness, but it sounds like it's worth watching for the themes.
Yeah, I watched In the Mouth of Madness a long time ago, so I didn't rewatch it. But I did rewatch The Thing, and then I watched Prince of Darkness. I watched The Thing because it's one of my favorites. It's been one of my favorites for a long time. And John Carpenter has always been holding himself as a really good director. And he's unique because he's a director and a composer. So he's able to blend those two things together, which I think are probably the most important bits, where he's a director and he's able to create the tone of the movie through his music. And so he has a lot of control over how you're going to feel about his films. And so he had to really come out and tell people, like, hey, this is actually like a spiritual trilogy that I made, and explained why, and sort of. So you can go and watch like an hour-long thing where he explains all of the connections.
Oh, wow.
And tells you like why it's connected, why he made it this way. I didn't watch it because I wanted to come up with my own things for it, but it's still worth a Google search to go figure out what exactly he has to say about these things.
Definitely.
Because he loves to sit for interviews. He usually will tell people everything they want to know about his work and loves talking about it.
Polar opposite to David Lynch, who's just
Yeah.
like, figure it out.
The fucking yeah. He was like, I'm not gonna fucking tell you. He's like, you can go ask the special
the
effects guy.
film.
Yeah.
Did you watch the film?
I was like, obviously, you didn't watch
Yeah,
Zodiac.
clearly
Anyway,
you didn't watch the film.
Overall, I love the thing. I can't wait to watch both of the other movies that came with it.
oh yeah,
Movie
for
trilogy.
sure. Definitely take the time. You don't have to watch them all in one night. You can watch it like a couple nights between each other because they're not related really to each other. It's more of like the crossing of themes and ideas and stuff like that.
Definitely.
So it'll work out. But before I let everyone go, I just want to remind everyone that we're super easy to find. We're on all the streaming services, so we're on the main ones. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Play Music, as well as iHeartRadio and SoundCloud, which is our main place that we put up the podcast. We have our Instagram and we have our Facebook page as well, and they can all be found by Google searching Bringing Down Grindhouse. And this will take you directly to all of our main pages. We love getting comments and interactions on there. We will most likely go on there and argue with you in the comments, but we love when somebody comes on there and tells us that we're wrong so that we can start explaining and getting into it. And we always miss things whenever we're in these podcasts. I think of stuff all the time when I leave the podcast and I'm like, we should have talked about this. So there's always things we're willing to discuss, and definitely message us. We like getting the attention. But thank you guys so much for coming out, and I hope everyone has a good night.
Stay spooky.
Thank you for having me on, boys.